Welcome back to Raw Thoughts with Mackenzie Tiggs. I just once again want to thank everybody for showing up, coming in, taking a look. Love your support. Keep liking, sharing, subscribing to the podcast. Today we have somebody that actually wrote in on wanting to be on the podcast. So I really appreciate that with, finding interest, knowing and, that we want to share stories, and that is exactly what this podcast is about, is sharing your story. So today we have Katie. She is a relationship coach, which, you could go into many different things. So welcome on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Katie Nichols. I am a daughter of God. I am a wife to Caleb Nichols and a mother of Madeline, Brady, and Colton. And those are my greatest blessings and my greatest everything. I love identifying as the person who is part of that family. And I'm a relationship coach. So that's kind of the big things about me.
Okay. How did you get into being a relationship coach, and what does that really look like?
Yeah. So I have wanted to help people for a really long time. That's kind of always been just something I felt called to. And about 3 years ago, probably, I started diving into the life coaching world, where I just knew I wanted to help people, and I really wanted to help moms and people kind of balance life with corporate work and their marriages and all the things. And so I started posting on social media, and my goal really was to help uplift people and maybe give them some pieces of advice, some things that I learned along the way. So that started. And then this past year, I've really just been kind of trying to align and figure out, what is my calling? What am I passionate about? And just every time I think about it, I think about relationships and specifically marriage. I just love marriage so much. And I think it's such a beautiful union of two people. And so I just really started getting into it and thinking about the fact that for the past probably 10 plus years, I've been somebody that my friends and my community come to for advice on relationships. And I've learned so much because I love it so much that I've always been studying the relationships around me, the people around me, the dynamics of their relationships, and kind of what's made them happy or what seems to make them unhappy. And I just realized that I have such a passion for helping women specifically, but find happiness in their marriage and in their partner, and find happiness in their life by really getting to that happiness with that person that's like their person. You know?
Absolutely. Do you find, the way our culture is a lot, like marriage is something that, sometimes you fall in love with that person, you get married, you have kids first, then you get married. Like the term marriage, like, did you have a good upbringing with your parents in a marriage? Like, marriage is so different to everybody.
Absolutely.
And you seem to be so in love with it.
Yeah. I think that's why I love it so much, because every single human is not perfect and they're all different, right? Like, we're not perfect and we're all different.
Oh, yeah.
And every relationship is the same. And so as I've just studied relationships and talked to so many different people that have had different issues in their marriages or relationships or just all of the things, it's been so interesting to just hear what really motivates them and all of their past that have brought them to the place that they're at and the reasons why they are the way they are. My parents are still together 33 years.
Wow.
And, they've had a lot of ups and downs, and they have shown me a lot about loyalty. There's a lot of things that I, wouldn't want from like their marriage, but there's a lot of things that I do want. And I have had people just in my life be really great examples of what marriage can be. So
Right.
what that relationship, what that union can be. And so, yeah, but you're absolutely right. There's so many different variations of that.
Yeah. I grew up, right? My parents were divorced. I didn't know them. And then my mom remarried. And I've known that relationship.
Yeah.
But so many people base what they want in a marriage off of typically what they don't want in a marriage. You know, they try to avoid, like, hey, this is what I was taught this is what was just my environment.
Yeah.
This is maybe what I don't want to have in a relationship.
Right. Yeah. And I stumbled into mine. Like I got really lucky.
Yeah. Tell us about your marriage.
Yeah. So, I think that's the thing too. Like I've learned so much. So my husband and I have been together for 17 years. We've been married for 10 in June. And, we were young. He was my first boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
Like I had dated other guys, but he was my first like boyfriend. And, that's why I say I stumbled into it, because I got really lucky to find such a good guy, but we had a lot of ups and downs. We dated for 7 years before we got married, and off and on. And, yeah, I mean, he's incredible. There's so many stories I'm sure we'll get into today, but he, when we started, we were young and we both had our own things. It's so funny because we had a lot of friends in high school that dated, and they'd be like, oh, we're going to get married. I know what our wedding's going to look like.
Right.
And me and Caleb were like, oh, like, nah. Like, we are in high school and we're dating and this is fun. But like neither of us, we talk about what we wanted in the future. Like we both knew we wanted family. We both knew we wanted, to be successful in our own right or whatever. But we never were like, we're going to get married.
Right.
All the things. And so, yeah, kind of funny. But we just had a lot of fun together.
And then, I mean, from high school, like what did that marriage look like? What were the next steps? How did you find out that like, this is the person that I'm going to marry?
So, the story. So we dated for 5 years, and that was a little off and on too, but mostly on. And, how do I put this? So I was not acknowledging things that I needed in my life. So we dated for 5 years, and let's just get all the way into it.
That's what we're here for.
So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Caleb, my husband, is not. And I grew up in a family where my mom is a member of our church as well, and my dad is Catholic. And so they argued about religion when I was younger a lot. Now they have like much more of a mutual respect for each other about it, but they argued a lot about it. And so that was kind of what I knew growing up. And I really loved Caleb. And so I just felt like if I was going to date him, I couldn't do this thing. He never said anything to me about it, but I just felt like I just need to separate the two.
Right.
And so I spent 5 years with him trying to find my value in him, because I didn't understand. I wasn't leaning into the fact that I am a daughter of God and I am loved unconditionally, and I have so much value for just who I am.
Right.
Just
you as a person.
Me as a person. Me alone as an individual person. I have so much value. I have so much to give in this world. And I wasn't leaning into that. I was trying to lean away from it because I didn't want to feel guilty, or I didn't want to,
disturb
whatever
the peace.
Right. Whatever the things are that you kind of, put in your limiting beliefs about who you are, or whatever. And so I was trying to find that in him, and really what it ended up being was me kind of being a doormat. Like I would let, he'd do whatever he wanted, and I just would kind of be like, yeah, okay. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's not that he was perfect by any means, but there was so much more insecurity on my part that led to a lot of the problems. So kind of turned into him being a jerk because I was really naggy and great, and not all my fault, but
right.
He'd want to go out with his friends. We were so young when we started dating. So he'd want to go out and party with his friends. And I'd, 1 o'clock in the morning at the party be like, all right, like, can we go home now? And he'd be like, I'm hanging out with my friends. But that was like an all the time thing. And so, and he just, at the end of the day, he just never could give me that. He could never make me find value in myself.
So how did you not, just leave the relationship?
Yeah. So, I think it took me a long time to realize, but the thing about Caleb is he's like, honestly, one of the most incredible, like his heart and the person he is, he's one of the most incredible people you'll ever meet. And so I think I knew that, right? Like I think I didn't want to let go of that, because even though there was, so many arguments we'd have about stupid things and all this stuff, we still had fun together. And I just didn't want to let go of this like incredible person that I knew he was, But it did ultimately, after 5 years, we moved in together, and those are all things that I didn't really want to do before marriage, but it wasn't him. I was the one that was like, we're together all the time. Like, let's save on rent and like, let's do this thing. And I think it just got to a point where he was partying and hanging out with his friends. And I was just like, I don't want this life. I'd seen so many people in my life deal with alcoholism and, you know, things that were close to me. And it was just like, he was going out a lot and people are like, it's just a phase. He's young. But I was like, I don't want to hang out and wait to see if that's the case or not, you know?
Right.
And also like just having this internal battle of like, who am I? And like, why can't I be happy alone? And why am I so dependent on him? And all of those kind of internal things as well.
So how'd you figure it out?
So I just started praying, and I really got to this place where it was like March Madness or something like that. I was like, let's not go out. And he was like, I'm going out. And I just was like, all right, like I'm done. Like I'm not gonna, you're not putting me first, and I can't, like I'm not doing that anymore. And I had kind of started wanting to pray more. And so I did, and I just started feeling like, I think I started to understand my value and my worth. And then I just was like, I'm done. Like I miss my family. My family lives in Las Vegas. And we were in Boise. And I was like, I'm just done. I'm done being here. I'm done, you know, being miserable because of myself, not because of him. But I just am like, I don't want to party. This isn't the life I want. And so I told him that. And then I said, specifically, I said, I'm moving to Las Vegas after this semester, because I was in college at the time at Boise State. And he was like, for the summer? And I was like, indefinitely. And then that was it. And then we still lived together for like 2 weeks. And he never asked me to stay, which now, like, man, looking back on it, I'm so grateful. Because had he, I would have.
Right.
I would have totally just been like, yes, okay. Because I loved him so much.
Right. But you also needed at that time to love yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is it so easily could have been pulled back into just focusing on the relationship and him and not focusing on me at all, you know? And so, so I left. My mom moved up here, or not moved up here. My mom came up here, rented a car so we could move all my stuff down to Las Vegas, and I left. And that was one of the hardest times in my life. Because I loved him so much. But it was something that I really needed. And so we did it. I left, and I was like, I'm not going back. We're over.
Right.
It was Las Vegas.
So when you went down to Vegas, I mean, there's still, you miss someone. You miss what you had with them. And it sounds like you had a great friendship with him too. Yeah. Not only a loving relationship, but a true friendship. What was it that made you work on yourself and not, you know, go in a spiral of the relationship? That was the turning point of leaving. Yeah. But then you still had to do some work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And man, let me tell you, what a blessing that I was like 12 hours away, because having to do the work on myself and not falling back into it, the only way that happened was I was so far away from it and surrounded by my family, right? But I knew that I needed more. Like, that was the whole reason I left. I knew that it wasn't enough. I wasn't fulfilled. And so it was like, what do I need? And I think I just really started stepping into like, okay, I'm a daughter of God. I know that. So what does that mean? What does that mean to me? Right. And what does that look like? Not what people in my church say, not what, you know, this person says or that person says, but like, what does it mean to me? And I started like really just studying and leaning into my relationship with God. And man, I spiraled on the relationship. In fact, every month it got real bad. And I'd just be like bawling to my mom. I mean, I was devastated, and I kept having this crazy thing that would happen where I'd have dreams that we were back together, and it'd be so real. And I'd wake up and then he wouldn't be there.
Oh, wow.
And it happened so often. It was devastating. And then I kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, but I left him. Because like every time, you know, I'd text him or we'd text, I'd like take it as an opportunity to be like, how are you doing? Like send him this super long message. And then I was like, I have to let him go. I can't. It's so not fair for me to pull him back in. Like I'm the one who decided we had to end it, you know, even though there was such a big part of me that just missed him. I just missed him, you know, but I knew there was so much more for me. And so I just had to figure out what that meant.
And within the church, like, obviously you guys are back together. So like, what was that time between figuring out yourself? Like, how did you truly do that? You know, I think a lot of women, I think a lot of people are lost in that. I mean, I know I lost myself in the last relationship that I was in, you know, and it does have to take that time to be away from them.
Right.
But even though that you know they're not meant for you, you still miss them.
Yeah.
You still want to be around them. You still, you know, like want to be encompassed with them. Yeah. Even knowing they're not the right person.
Yeah. I had incredible counsel because I think for me it was hard for me to accept that he wasn't the right person, and I didn't even like putting that identity on it. It just was like this wasn't the right situation for me. But I did. I mean, I also at the same time had to be like, yeah, I'm done with that guy. Like I got to be done because you have to try to move on. So like you have to, you know what I mean? So I actually had a really great bishop who helped counsel me through a lot of it. And I remember so specifically sitting down and talking to him. And as a member of my church, a lot of people get married in the temple and they get sealed. And so I really thought that, you know, the encouragement would be like, yeah, go find someone you can be sealed to and like get married in the temple. And he was, oh my gosh, I just love this man so much. But he was kind of like a father figure to me too. He was just a very, very kind person. And I remember talking about Caleb and just being like, I mean, like, I know I'm done, you know, like, I know I'm done. I'm moving on. And he said, you know what? You don't need to decide that right now. Just take it step by step. Work on you. And I was like, whoa. Like, I was not expecting to hear that from him.
Right.
You know? And it was, honestly, it was so powerful for me because it gave me like that, putting the whole, like, I'm broken up. I'm out of this relationship. I'm never going to have him back again, because you feel like it's like a death, right? Like you're like so caught up in this. I've lost this person. So being able to set that aside and then focus on me, like, and so I was able to feel like it wasn't like, not that I was thinking we were going to get back together necessarily, but it just was like the thought of never being with him again was off the table. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, that's kind of pinning that. And now what do I need? And so I went on a lot of dates, and I had in our community, it's nice because you have like a singles board, right? So there's just, I mean, I went on dates with people. I wasn't dating people.
Right.
But it was so nice to just get to know different people and kind of focus on friendships. And I will tell you, almost every date I went on, I either in the middle of it would start talking about Caleb.
Oh.
Or I'd get home and start bawling. It was like for the whole year. So it was, I mean, I'm, like I said, I loved him a lot.
Well, and anybody, you know, compares them.
Yeah.
Like you know, even though your relationship was not perfect, that was who you were with, and that's what you know. And so everybody after that is going to be a comparison, you know, in some way or form.
Yeah. And there were so many great guys that I got to meet, but to be honest, there was no comparison. And I think that was like the hard thing for me. I was like, oh, you just don't even like measure up to him at all.
Yeah.
And it was the heart in him, right? Like it was the good, just, I don't know, I mean, we were together for 5 years. So I got to know him pretty well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, so how did you, like, you were working on yourself, you were doing your own thing, you were away from him, and then you're back together. Like how, what was that time, you know?
Yeah. So I moved to Vegas and I got a job, and I just started trying to make friends and go out and be social and kind of do all these things, because we started dating when I was 16. So it was like, you know, not that, again, he's like the least controlling person, which I was very blessed at, but I just like didn't know how to like be a person without him. And so I was like trying to be social and go do all these things, but I just missed him. And so then I ended up moving back to the Bay Area where I grew up, just to be around friends and people. And I met an amazing group of girls and had even, more relationships I was able to build and find out more about myself. And then my sister was going to BYU, Idaho. So I was in San Ramon, California, and my sister was like, why don't you just come and go to school with me? Like, just come here. And I was like, well, I'm not going back to Boise State because why would I ever go back to Boise? And I had already done 3 years, so I was pretty close to being done. So I was like, you know what, sure. Like, I'll just apply and see what happens. Like, who knows? So I applied for school and I got in. And then, which, I mean, not that's like super hard to get in, but I got in. And then was a lot closer in proximity. And so we hadn't talked for like 5 months or something like that. And I get a text message from him of our dogs, basically. They were his. I mean, they were with him, but like a picture of them, and it was like, we miss you or something like that. And so of course I like let that be my floodgate to like, he texted me. So like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? All the things. And we started talking, and it turned out he was in a relationship at the time. So my sister actually so a little bit of a backtrack. My sisters had seen that he got on Facebook when we first broke up, and he hadn't ever been on social media when we were together. And so they found out, went on my Facebook and blocked him. So I had no idea that he had social media, like none at all, but they were keeping tabs on him.
What? Those are good sisters.
They're incredible. I have the best family. But so my sister knew that I was at BYU, Idaho with. And so I told her like, oh my gosh, Caleb texted me. Like, I'm so excited. And she was like, like, you are not, no. And I was like, just devastated again, because I had been waiting for him to message me so I could talk to him. And anyway, that relationship was ending. It wasn't really going anywhere. And I just, we ended up having a lot of conversations, and it's kind of crazy, but I think I responded back to him with just like, I can't talk to you right now, like out of respect to our 5 years and whoever this person is, like,
right.
And then he was like, can you just let me explain? Like, our biggest problem was that we never, he says this, okay, and this guy is not a talker. And he was like, our biggest problem was we never communicated. Like, can you just let me explain? And I knew that he was such a good person that he wouldn't be like, I just knew that he wasn't like a shisty person.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So we talked on the phone, and we talked about everything and all of these things that I had been afraid to talk to him about, like with my church and things that I believed and all these things. And again, not because he told me I couldn't, but because of these beliefs I had based on how I grew up. It just all came out. It just all was out there. And we just kind of slowly started talking again. And he was so respectful of my beliefs and who I was. And it was just kind of this thing where we just fell back into this relationship. And now that I was being completely honest with him about what I wanted, because I knew what I wanted. Like, I want Heavenly Father in my life. I want these things. I want to have a family. I want to get married. And when we were broken up, I wasn't like, I need to be married now. I was 21 and like, listen, I'm going to have fun.
Right.
But with him, it's like we'd been together for so long. So it's kind of like, are we doing this or are we not doing this?
Right.
So anyway, we got back together and got engaged pretty quick because he was just like, it's so cheesy, but so cute. I was, because this guy before we broke up was like, well, we might be able to get engaged and, be engaged for like 4 years or something.
Wow.
I was like, okay, no. But so then he started talking about marriage a little bit. And I was like, well, what does that mean to you? Because like, less than a year ago, you were like, not about this. And he was just like, I lost you once. I don't want to lose you again. Like, I know I want you in my life. And so, so we got engaged and got married. I think less than a year later by that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So everything that you had learned from the relationship with him.
Yeah.
And then now you have him back.
Right.
How do you continue to set those boundaries and be honest with yourself and not fall back into the old relationship that you had with him?
Yeah. Because I know I'm valuable. He's lucky to have me. I'm super lucky to have him. And I always felt that. But now I know that he's lucky to have me.
Yeah.
And so it's okay for me to be myself.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's okay for me to be myself and to be loved for who I am. And he loves me so much more. Like, our relation, I can't even explain to you. It's so funny because this is another reason that I was so excited to share with people, because our relationship has had so many different faces.
Right.
Like, even throughout our marriage, because you learn so much about the person. But because we were, you know, young and dating and kind of all over the place, and then we got married and we kind of started figuring it out. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, very lucky that I was able to figure it out with that same person, but it's because of the respect he has for me and the respect I have for him. And, you know, and now we're in an interfaith marriage, and he's incredibly supportive of me and my beliefs, and which is just such a beautiful thing, you know? I mean, it's not easy, and I don't recommend it to people. Like, it's hard. If you can find somebody who has your same beliefs, like, you know, go for it. But I wouldn't change my decision ever.
That's awesome.
Never, ever, yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you help coach, I mean, women that seem to be like very similar to you?
Yeah.
You know, you kind of honed in on like, I had to learn from this and I had to come out from this. Now you can kind of grasp onto that and teach them, like, what does it look like teaching them?
Yeah, I mean, and so that comes into the everybody's so different, right? Like, what worked for me and Caleb is not like, you can't just like put it on them and be like, this will work for you, because their husbands are different and they're different. And
every perspective is different, every situation.
Yes.
I mean, we're humans. Everybody is different.
Exactly. And we all have our own past and our own upbringings. I mean, that's a big thing about marriage, right? Like, people are like, you know it's hard, or you know some things like jive or whatever, but melding those two people, even if you have so much in common, like, you had different people that raised you and different experiences and different things that made you who you are today. So like, those things come up, and it's like, how do you respect that, and how do you blend those things, and how do you value differences, you know, and look at it. So for me, helping women is just the biggest thing is that I understand what I need from him, and he understands what he needs from me. And so we've been able to communicate that. At any point, if we stopped communicating that, our marriage would fail. Like, this is a big thing too. This is, I think, why I shied away from relationship coaching for so long, because I didn't want people to think that I thought my marriage was perfect.
Right.
You know, like, I'm not coming in here being like, oh, I'm like, I know everything. It's just that I can see things because I've studied it for so long, and like, I can see what happened. So I had some really cool experiences. The first year of our marriage, we went into it, and my mom is incredible. My mom is so awesome. But she's given me so many pieces of advice throughout the years that have really like just sunk in deep. And one of them was marriage does not change the person.
Right.
Like, just because you get married, they do not change who they are. So you make sure you love them for who they are before you get married. And I knew I loved Caleb, and I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to change him or anything like that, you know. But I think I thought, well, you know, these things are happening and these things are happening, so he's going to want to do this or he's going to want to do that. That first year, the first year of marriage, I mean, I don't care who tells you that it was perfect. It's rocky. Yeah. We'd been together for 7 years before that, you know, off and on. And it was hard. I mean, I think for us too, because we were like coming back together and trying to figure these things out. And I was setting boundaries like, we're not doing that again.
Right.
Like, I'm not doing that again. So if that's what you need, then we need to not be together. And I think that was a big thing. I wasn't afraid to say that. I wasn't afraid to be like, if this isn't going to work for us, it's not going to work for us, you know? But I had a really good friend tell me, I was talking to her one night, and she was like, Katie, you need to choose your love and love your choice.
Wow.
And that was line from a talk that one of our prophets had given, and it was just such a beautiful sentiment, and it just really resonated with me. And I think right around the same time I had spoken with another friend, and I'm a pretty big advocate of like not trash talking your significant other to your friends, because like, it just doesn't ever, like, it's never going to benefit you.
Right.
Like, if you need to make a change in your relationship, then make the change. But going and talking badly about them, you're just going to take all that negativity into the relationship when you're with them, right? So if you need to vent, you find out who those people are that you can trust with your relationship, that aren't going to tell you like, I'll leave him.
Right.
Like, oh, he's a jerk. Like, just because they don't know his side of it, or,
Right.
you know.
Or they're like, you're always having problems. Just leave it. And it's like, sometimes we don't tell you our best parts. We just tell you our problems.
Right.
You know?
Totally. And I found myself in that first year venting a lot. But then it, you know, come back to look at it and realize it was a lot of things, a lot of expectations that I had for him that he didn't ever need to meet. And it wasn't like, you know, I mean, you always want to better yourself and better that person and stuff like that. But it was just like things that I thought I needed. And then when I had a couple people be like, listen, you need to, you know, like choose him, love him.
What were some of those expectations that you, in your own mind, because I think it's all of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And, like, what were those expectations that you were holding on to?
The one that I will say is being in an interfaith relationship, I felt like, well, I'm doing all the right things. And we went into this and I was totally honest with him. So I think that I didn't ever like allow myself to fully voice it. But I think that there was kind of this expectation, like, he'll go to church with me. Like, he'll do these things, right? But that wasn't fair. And when we got married, in my head, I was like, he is not a member. That's okay. Like, that's okay. I'm accepting him, marrying him as he is. And so that was the conversation that my friend and I were having. And she was like, and she is a member of our church, and she was, incredible too. I have a lot of really good people in my life. I'm very blessed. And she told me that, and I was like, man, yeah. And it was so crazy because I just started seeing him in a different light after that. Like, I'm choosing you.
Right.
And you are so great. Like, you're so great.
Like, hone in on the good things, not the bad.
Exactly, because none of us are perfect.
Right.
And he loves me for me, regardless of all of my tantrums or my spiral anxiety or, all the things that come with me. He loves me for me. So I need to love him for him. And in the corporate world, I've encountered a lot of different people, a lot of different women who have been in marriages. And that's another reason that I wanted to go into relationship coaching, because I've heard so many people be so down on their husbands. And, admittedly, I don't know their husband side of it, right?
Right.
I'm here, I'm just listening to them, but it's a lot of trash talking. It's a lot of, even on things where it's like, oh, he sent me an I love you text, and like, can he just get a life type things? Like, it's
whoa.
I know, which, and I'm like the I love you text sender, so like, that's my role. Like, I love it. I'm just like all of the words of affirmation. And so, but it kind of just caught me off guard, right? Like, just like, that's like, he's just expressing his love for you. Like, that's not a bad thing, you know? And again, I don't know those full stories, but just made me realize that there's like a lot of things that we can do on our side to, and I had like read books and stuff over the years that kind of just like made me realize that as the woman in the relationship, we have a lot of control over how the relationship goes. Yeah. Not always. There's always extenuating circumstances, but unless he's, a narcissist or has like a mental health issue or something like that, like for the most part, like, men are simple and they're kind of one track minded, right? Yeah. And we are complex, and not in a bad way. Like, it's such a beautiful thing that we bring to the relationship, but we think about all the things.
Yes.
So, or, I guess I can't speak for every woman, but
a lot of women, that's kind of the nurturing, that's kind of,
right.
Generationally.
Yeah.
Like, you're the woman of the house. Everybody wants to say like, oh, the man of the house. It's right. Like, no, but who's doing a lot of that? Yeah. The wives.
Yeah. And I'm really lucky. My husband cooks and does like a lot of the things, but yes, like, exactly. The thinking and the worrying and the protecting in that manner, and so anyway, just the concept that men are simple and women are more complex. And if you're nice to him, he'll be nice to you. Yeah. And there's so much more to it than that, right? But like, if you really take a step back and look at who that person is, like, what a beautiful thing that you could have this person be your partner forever and go through the ups and downs together and learn from each other. And it's not always going to be perfect, but just always be the person that's building them up instead of the person trying to tear them down, right? And I think that in marriage, you're with that person all the time. It gets so easy to get caught up in kids, in work, in all of the stresses of life, things going on with your family, things going on, with friends or whatever.
There's so many variables and factors.
Totally. And you lose sight of them. You lose sight of who that person is. I remember at one of the jobs I had, I talk about Caleb in a pretty positive light. I mean, again, he is not a perfect person, but neither am I. And I think very highly of him. And I remember someone saying to me once, like, they said something about their husband, and I was like, oh, well, like Caleb. And they were like, yeah, Katie, we know you love Caleb. And I just remember thinking, like, why is that a bad thing?
Right. You should like that's who you're choosing.
Right.
Like you should tell your friends how much you love them, and you should be telling them how great they are, you know?
And like I said, I have people in my life that I can vent to. And and people at work, like I vented about things. I'll be like, oh, Caleb did this thing. Darn it. Like that really frustrated me. But for me, it's important to spin it into also like, but he does a lot of great things too.
Right.
You know? And it was that. And then I had another person in another job be like, oh, well, just wait until you've been together for 20 years and then you'll, whatever. I'm like, well, we're at 17 now and I still like him. So,
wow.
But it's like, I want to help people find that,
Yeah.
I want to help people step into that because again, it gets so easy. Oh, so many good things. When I was 17, like I said, I've always been super interested in relationships. And I worked with this woman who was in her 40s. And she was super awesome, but she was going through a divorce and she was actually living with her husband at the time. And so I just started asking her questions because I'm me and I like I said, I've always been interested. So I just kind of was like, what happened? Like, what happened? And she's like, you know what? We let the little things and the kids come between us. And we just separated and we started living different lives and just slowly but surely lost sight of each other. So that's been something that's always kind of been in my head too. But I'm like, man, I see how easy it is. Mm-hmm. Like you see how easy it is to happen. And I just, like I said, I think marriage is such a beautiful thing. So the idea of being able to help women figure out what they need, because I think a lot of times we don't even know. Like we don't know what we want or what we need, right? And it's that whole thing of like, I really wanted this necklace. How did he not know I wanted this necklace? But like, did you ever tell him?
Right.
Like just like, did you ever actually communicate those things to him? Or did you just expect him to know because one time you were like, oh, that necklace is pretty.
Right.
Like just communicating to them, figuring out what you want, figuring out what you need, and then figuring out what their communication style is and getting it through to them. Like my husband does not talk a lot. And that was something that I talked to my therapist about. I was like, he doesn't want to talk to me. Like, he doesn't want to like communicate about these things. This was just a few years ago. Like, I was like, I feel like he always says like, you're good. Cause I'll be like, what can I work on?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, you're fine. And I told her, I was like, that can't be true. Like, I'm not,
Right.
And she was like, maybe he just works it out in a different way. Like maybe and he does, he's a fisherman and that's like his thing. That's like his therapy and he loves it. And it's so cute. He gets so excited to go. Mm-hmm. But I just realized like, oh, he just has a different communication style. But the thing about him is that when I talk to him in not a manner of attacking, but just expressing like, hey, this has really been bothering me, or, I'm upset about this thing, whether it has to do with him or something else, he listens. And he's such a calming force. Like I'm really lucky to have that because I'm not that all the time. So, so anyway, just things like that have helped me just kind of align, evaluate and value what I have. And I want to help people find that.
Yeah.
And see that.
So, I mean, what does your coaching style look like? Like, what do you sit down and talk with them? Do you meet both husband, wife? Like, how are you helping them?
Yeah. So I work with wives specifically. I definitely would like to venture into couples in the future, but right now what I know is how to help women. And so it's very much just an open style of let's get to know you. What do you want? What's going on? What are you experiencing? And then setting goals on like, where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. Let's get you there. Let's talk through it.
And what if someone's in a relationship or, every marriage is very complex, and women, sometimes don't know when to leave or don't know how to leave. Like, how do you know to support that woman for so far until maybe the husband isn't listening or doesn't want to change, or the wife's doing the work and you're working on her, but that's still not getting to the husband.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say that it's a very in-depth conversation when we start, and it's not like, there's like free consultation to like, let's really figure this out and dive into what's going on here. And I do a lot of evaluation to figure out, can I help you? Because I don't, if there is mental health issues on your husband's part, or he's completely checked out, or other things, I think there are things you can do. But a lot of the work that I focus on, honestly, is that inner work, finding the value in yourself. And when you take that into your relationship, it just makes such a difference. It is a lot of like, how can you work on your relationship? What are things you can see? What are things you can do? But a lot of it is that internal, just kind of the life coaching side of it, but like mixed with the relationship aspects and pieces, I guess.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of correlation between, working with the wives and other parts of her relationships are doing better too? Because you're not only talking to your husband, but then maybe that's like, oh, maybe I should be talking to my mom like that. Or maybe I should be, having this discussion with my sisters, to better connect with them or better communicate with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the beautiful thing about working on like yourself and that affecting your relationships, right, is that you do get to realize like your communication style. And when I say like what you need, it's not always in a relation, like an intimate, relation, like marriage way, right? You might get to understand like, oh, I really need time with people. I really need this thing. Like one thing for me that I realized, my husband will go on trips for work, or just really they're fishing trips.
Yeah.
He says they're work trips. They're really just fishing trips. And this still happens. I'll get so frustrated like the week before. I'll just like nitpick about things. And I love therapy too. 1000% pro therapy. And one thing I realized when I was like talking to her about one of the times a long time ago was I miss him. Like I get so frustrated because I'm like, oh, he's leaving and he's going and he's doing this. I miss him.
Yeah.
I just like spending time with him. And I'm so glad he gets to go and do these trips and go and, experience like fun things for him. Because I don't mind fishing with him, but like going on like a fishing, like that's not like my idea of a great time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, when I realized that I wasn't mad at him because he was leaving and like, why is he going on this thing? But it really just came down to like what I needed was just that attention and that like love from him. And then I could tell him that like, hey, the night before you leave, I need you to just like hang out with me.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was like a huge eye-opening thing, but things like that, right? Where you just like, you really do get to understand what do you need in in your relationships and stuff. And it can help in all different aspects of life.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think sometimes, like obviously I am newly seeing a lot of relationship, like this is hitting a lot of home to me. What about, I mean, the expectations of a marriage and helping, they're not wives yet, but like that expectation of being a wife and what your duties are and what, do you hone into any of that? Would that be any of your interest?
I totally would. I mean, so what I kind of have like focused on is what I know as like a wife, but man, I would totally love to talk to people about their relationships. And I've learned a lot. Like I said, I've been studying them for a long time, and I've had the same relationship with one person in so many different aspects of life. So like I've learned a lot through that, and I mean, to be honest, I think the biggest thing is like, get rid of the expectations.
Right.
Like, what do you want? What do you want in a person, And then they make you happy. They're kind. They're loving. And then take that into the relationship and understand that they're human, Certain things, obviously, like we do not accept.
Right.
Like abuse, no. Women's and Children's Alliance in Boise is incredible. If anybody is in a situation where there's any type of emotional, physical abuse, like please reach out. It's an incredible organization and they can and will help you, men and women.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. We've actually volunteered with them and they do phenomenal work. And I mean, a lot of Boise locals, love the WCA. Like they're phenomenal people.
Yes, me too. I've done some volunteering there and done a couple of presentations with them. So they're incredible. But, you know, outside of any type of that, you know, just really understanding that you value who you are, that you have value, taking that into the relationship. And then, you know, what are important things to you? Like, I think it's just really figuring out what that is, because for me, one of the biggest things is like, Caleb is so calm. He just is. He does not have like a temper, which is,
you're like, sometimes I want you to get mad.
oh my gosh, totally. In the beginning of our relationship, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why won't you yell back at me? Like, I'm like so mad. And like my fighting method for a long time was just like, oh my gosh, like, why are you doing this thing? And he'd just be like, I don't know. Like,
you're like,
right.
I need some more emotion than that.
I know.
Come on.
And then I realized like, oh, he does give me so much emotion, but he also is this safe place. He's just like this calm. And for me, because I have struggled with anxiety my entire life, didn't even know it was anxiety for a really long time. Just thought I was just a worrywart, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how people used to phrase it.
Yeah.
And he was just this calming presence. And yeah, man, it's such a blessing in my life. But like, that is something I needed, right? So there's other things that I wanted. Like when we first had our daughter, I really wanted to stay home. And that was really hard for me that I had to go back to work. And over the years, it's been challenging, you know, but when I stop and I look back at the life that we've built together and the beautiful children that we have, it's just like, I mean, I couldn't be any luckier.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the thing though, right? Is I had expectations of staying home, or I had expectations of, you know, I always thought I'd be, even though I had to be real young to think this, but with that like corporate, like really buttoned up dude. And Caleb is a roofing contractor, and he is incredible. I mean, and he looks so handsome when he gets dressed up, but like he's not that, you know, like that.
He's not that
suit
every
and
day.
tie.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just all these things that you know, you grow up kind of thinking, expectations you have. And it's like, okay, I don't stay home. I work, but what do I have?
Right.
And is that, you know what I mean? It's just looking, I think it's taking like jotting down a list of all the blessings you have, focusing on those things. It really changes your perspective.
I think a lot of like gratitude is my, you know, like you have to be, and it could be so minuscule, you know, like getting to wake up and have coffee. Like some people don't get to have that. Like
absolutely.
I get to have a shower when I want to.
Yes.
I get to, you know, do these things and drive these places. Like they could be so small, but understanding that it is those little things.
Right.
That start building up, to either build a relationship up, to build your life up, or to break it down. You know, like that lady, you know, it really is a lot of those small things that I think in our minds too, we're like, oh, that's small. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. And then that compiles, and then that gets deeper, and then that gets to be a bigger issue. And I always talk about my champagne effect, where I will bottle it up, all those tiny little things, and then snap, the cork comes off, and I am a disaster. Like learning to be able to communicate those things of like, I know it's small, but it matters.
Right. Well, and that, like, after I had that conversation with my friend when I was 17, it's always stuck in my mind, right? So there's a lot of times Caleb and I will have that, like, we'll be just kind of at each other's throats for the day or whatever, you know, I mean, just like, why are you doing this? Yeah, totally. Ups and downs of all relationships. But before we go to bed, I'll always be like, we need to talk about this. And that's a big difference. Like before, I was always so afraid he would leave me that I like never wanted to like really get into anything that frustrated me, right? Like that's a big difference of when we got married. Like after I had figured out my value, that I was like, no, like we need to talk about this stuff. So now I'll be like, all right, listen, we're not going to let these tiny little things like continue to like I'm bugged,
right?
You know? So, and if you're bugged, let's talk about it. And then we talk about it. And I tell him like, hey, it's really frustrated me because of this thing. But that the thing is, I'm not saying like, oh, you are so annoying. Like, I can't believe you did this thing. It's like, this frustrated me and this is why.
Right.
Like, this is what happened. And I don't want these things to build up because you're the most important thing to me. And I don't want to live my life without you.
Right.
At any point. Like, I don't want to feel like we need to go different ways because we're so frustrated.
Right. Do you see that? Like, what do you see the biggest part of relationships and why they fail? Like,
I think it's expectations that aren't met, unrealistic expectations, and not valuing the person, like who they are.
mm-hmm.
Like, really getting back to why you married them, why you fell in love with them, and like just who they are as like an individual person, and remembering that, right? Because it's so easy to forget that they are a person. So when you're criticizing them, or you're, lashing out, or you're whatever, they're a human with emotions too. But I think it's, you're so close to that person and you're with them all the time, and you just stop seeing the effect, or you stop thinking you have an effect on them.
Right.
So you're not doing what I want you to do. So clearly I need to just, we go about it the wrong way. And then the negativity. And when people are negative, it just seeps in. Like we talked about, it's, you can be grateful, and you can you can build on that and just find all of the gratitude in your life and all the things, or you can get stuck in that negative spiral.
Right.
And it does take you down.
Yeah. So how do you stay so positive? I mean, right. All the, you've learned these things, you're teaching these things, but still at the end of the day, you as a person, how are you staying positive? How are you taking care of yourself? I think self-care for women and wives is it's a burden, oh, I can't go do that. I need to be there for that person, or I don't have time. I'm doing this. How do you truly value yourself?
Yeah. So for me, I'm pretty in touch with what I need, and sometimes that's time. Sometimes I just need time to go do my own thing, whether that's sit in my room or go run errands on my own or whatever. But I also run, and not crazy long distances, but I would say I'm a runner. I enjoy it a lot. And just taking time, I don't know, talking with my best friend. I have specific things. Talking with Caleb and I have this thing where he's really active during the day, and I like to go out and do stuff too, but we love having a show together. And that is self-care to me. At the end of the day, when we put our babies to bed and we do our night routine, and then we just go lay down together, that's my favorite. I feel so calm. I feel so just and then sometimes when I'm feeling really just I always call it up, in the air, just not grounded, I make Caleb do this thing called hug and love. It's just, I'm okay, I just need, because he's not a super PDA or touchy. We're not, he's not going to cuddle with me all the time. And so I've accepted that about him too, right? That's really hard for some people. And I would totally cuddle with him all the time. But he does this thing with me where I'll just be I need it. And he'll just hug me. And it's just just so tight. I'm I just need you to just hug me. And we just lay there 20 seconds or whatever. And it's so nice because, that's a compromise that we've made, because he's not let's cuddle 24/7.
Right.
But I'm but I need this.
Right.
And he's okay.
And he's able to provide that for you.
Yeah.
And also on his part, understand hey, I need to be a good husband and also do this, because it's a balancing effect.
Right. But it's something I realized I needed for my own self-care, was that partnership and that security feeling from him, to just, and it's not that that doesn't have to do with my value, but it's more just when life is just crazy, or I just feel so much is going on. It's it just grounds me. He just brings me back down to earth, and I just know everything will be okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For the wives, how can they get in touch with you? How you are a phenomenal person.
Thank you so much.
Just hearing about relationships, and I think that a lot of people, I know a lot of my girlfriends that are married, and they come around, and I hear the negative things about their husbands, or having to remind them why did you marry him? There's got to be reasons.
Right.
There's reasons why you married them.
Totally. And, for those out there that are kind of stuck in that negative spiral, or kind of, you think, oh my gosh, I've kind of been doing that. This is not a judgment thing from me. It's, I genuinely want to help people, be happy in their marriages. So, you can find me on Instagram at the Katie Nichols. And that's kind of the best spot to find me right now. I'm still getting my name out there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And what would be, I mean, like maybe a quick tip for wives that you're like, hey, let me leave you with this. Like if I can give you one piece of advice, if you aren't able to reach out to me or you are feeling this, like what would that be?
Sit down and just take a second and think about why you love your husband. Just stop everything, like take a moment and just think about why you love him.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, ladies.
Yeah.
And to even our men, I mean, you know I have a lot of men listeners on here as well. I think this can, every time we say wives, it can be husbands.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's humans, and I really do think that we get so busy with doing, and we forget.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I forgot who I was in my last relationship and finding those things and learning from them.
Right.
It's not bad. You're not doing anything wrong. No. Like this is what life is. Like that's
totally. Yes.
That's why I wanted this podcast, is like bring people on and share your story, because I could promise you that you are not the only one that this is happening to.
Absolutely. I mean, and that is the thing, is it's life, right? So that's what I want to do, is help people work through this huge part of their life to better it.
Absolutely.
Like figure out, different skills that they can use, different things they can take into their relationship to make it better and to find that value.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on here, getting to speak, getting to say your story. Is there anything else you would like to talk about or say?
I think that's it. Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sure there's more I could go on. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you. Definitely take a look at her Instagram. If you would like to be a guest on Raw Thoughts podcast, make sure you can DM me on Instagram. You can email me at m.rawthoughts@gmail.com. And let's see who we have next on. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning into the show today. Your feedback is very important to me. If you could leave a review, as well as follow me on Instagram at rawthoughts.podcast and email in at m.rawthoughts@gmail.com if you have any guest suggestions.